going on? Caught me sitting here sleeping. Have a little breakfast. If you're listening to the show, just know there's not normally a protein thing sitting there on the desk. Oh, it hit the camera. I hit the camera with the protein thing. Now Alex has to go fix another camera. I didn't mean to do that. A little goofy this morning. It's been a while since I've done the podcasting thing. How does this even work? What do we even do in here? President Trump has made a couple of nominations that, well, really matter. One of them is horrendously bad. Another just terrible, awful, god-awful pick. Another one is a blessing from God. We'll talk about both of these, but we also need to talk about this conversation that Joe Rogan had with Marc Andreessen. Marc is one of the guys who made the biggest splash possible in internet history. He was the inventor of the Netscape browser, which took the invention of Tim Berners-Lee, which was the HTTP protocol, and probably HTML, and allowed us to be able to read contents of other people's computers. Now, we hear that today and say, well, so what? It wasn't happening then. That connection was APRANET, and it was built on the background of something, or backbone that the Department of Defense built, so they could access computers around the world, around the country, and share information with one another. When it was commercialized, it made such a splash that Microsoft had to respond because they didn't get the internet. They were late by cutting off the air supply of the company. That's what caused Microsoft to get the DOJ on their tail, and the attempt to break up the company, the monopoly charges. It was very costly for Microsoft. Marc Andreessen has been a full-on Democrat for many years, and he'd raised money for Democrats, and then he saw what they'd become. And when he saw what they'd become, he changed. And he went and spoke with Joe Rogan about that change. We'll talk about that, a couple of these nominations. We'll do this all with the help of Bulwark Capital Management at knowyourriskradio.com, and, of course, with God Almighty.
The Todd Herman Show is 100% disapproved by big pharma, technocrats, and tyrants everywhere. No. From the high mountains of free America, here's the Emerald City exile, Todd Herman.
Today is the day the Lord has made, and these are the times through which God has decided we shall live. Sure appreciate you being a part of the program. Sometimes you haven't done it for a while, you forget how to do the podcast. Is this where do I talk now? This is okay. Alex is giving me permission here. This is where you talk. So President Trump, this was beautiful. I actually love the way he announced his pick to run the DOJ. Of course, he announced it on Truth Social, which, by the way, has got like a multi-billion-dollar valuation on it. I'm proud to announce that Keshap Kash Patel will serve as the next director of the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Kash is a brilliant lawyer, investigator, and America First fighter who spent his career exposing corruption, defending justice, and protecting the American people. He played a pivotal role in uncovering the Russia hoax, standing as an advocate for truth, accountability, and the Constitution. Kash did an incredible job during my first term, where he served as Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, Deputy Director of National Intelligence, and Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council. Kash has tried over 60 jury trials. The FBI will end the growing crime epidemic in America, dismantle the migrant criminal gangs, and stop the evil scourge of human and drug trafficking across the border. Kash will work under our great Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to bring back fidelity, bravery, and integrity to the FBI. You might remember the General Counsel report that had indicated that at one point the FBI had forsaken all those things. The John Durham report. That didn't get quite the attention of the Bobby Mueller report, where Bobby Mueller detailed Hillary Clinton's national security felonies and then said no reasonable prosecutor would bring charges. You remember that? Great pick. See, this is interesting to me because, of course, Tulsi Gabbard, who follows a cult leader, she does. Let's just be honest. That's worrisome. She was targeted using the intelligence services. They called her a domestic terrorist and had her checked extra hard at airports, if you know what I mean. So now she is set to run the Department of National Intelligence. That's fascinating. Someone who was victimized by it now going to perhaps run it. Kash Patel learned from Google 5 years after the fact. Google's lawyers got in touch with him and said, hey, yesterday the order from the government expired. We can now tell you that the government had come at us with a secret subpoena and had seized your information, Gmail accounts, social media accounts, search data. Since Kash Patel had been a prosecutor and worked at the federal level, he knew they didn't just go to Google. They went to everybody. They went to his phone company. They probably went to his banks. They did this while he was running the Russia investigation with Congress. You want to talk about a constitutional crisis? The government using the government to investigate enemies within the government from a different branch of government. So Kash Patel's a great choice, and we'll get into later this week how the Mockingbird media is just unbelievably flipped out of their ever-loving, thick, round, bobbly gourds. On the other hand, President Trump has announced to run the DEA a guy named Chad Chronister. He was a sheriff who arrested pastors for holding services during the COVID lockdowns. Such a resume. He's a sheriff who blackmailed his deputies into taking COVID shots. Such a resume. We'll talk later this week on the Substack channel about Chad and what this likely did to people and why he is utterly disqualified from serving in any administration that contends to be populist in any way. He's the opposite of a conservative populist. He should be laughed at. Thomas Massey, Representative Massey, says he's utterly disqualified for that very reason. The pastor's name is Rodney Howard Brown. He held church services. Of course, you remember when Jesus confronted people who were sick, he said, "Get away from me." Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. No, wait, no, we'll take that out. Alex will edit that out later. No, Jesus actually went and cured him and hung out with him. So one great pick, one horrible pick. Overall, President Trump's running about a B right now with his nominations, at least as I see it. Marc Andreessen sat down with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, whose podcast and endorsement might well have swung the election towards President Trump. He reaches more young men in a period of minutes than the Mockingbird media can in a period of weeks. And when he decided to sit down and have that conversation with Rogan, Rogan was able to come out and endorse him. He sat down with Marc Andreessen to have this conversation that ranged through much of what Marc has learned as a member of the elite class, because he was a member of the elite class. Economically speaking, he still is. But ideologically, he's an outcast. It's got to give him a sense of nerves. You're going to go into a period of time right now in the holidays where a lot of people get extra nervous, extra anxious because of all the events. A party here, a party there, a family event here, setting up trees, taking down trees, putting out gifts, etc. It's supposed to be something that we celebrate together, the birth of the Lord Jesus, but it can become very, very, very disruptive. And I wanted to tell you something about Bioptimizers and their product Magnesium Breakthrough. I've talked a lot about how this is helpful with sleep, and it is. It's very, very helpful with sleep. It's helpful with regularity, etc. But Magnesium Breakthrough also helps people feel calm. It can combat deficiencies that you have in your body, deficiencies because of the way our nutritional supply works. People are short on magnesium. This is a full spectrum magnesium product with all 7 forms of organic magnesium in it. It gets you to a point where your body controls the stress hormone cortisol. Now, cortisol does something else. It causes your body to store fat. When your body's in a stress mode, it perceives this as in a fight or flight mode, thinking that you're going to be running away from a creature or in a state of war, because that's the sort of stress is how it just communicates that to the body. This helps control that. It also allows for the best possible absorption of the nutrients in your body. All of this in Magnesium Breakthrough. So don't let stress burn you out during this holiday season. Don't do that. Get Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers to give your body the magnesium it craves. It's the perfect gift for yourself or a loved one this holiday season. Go down to bioptimizers.com/Todd. Use code Todd to save an extra 10%. That's bioptimizers.com, promo code Todd. Bioptimizers.com/Todd, promo code Todd. Marc Andreessen was a guy who saw the capability of commercializing what had been APRANET. So people who are below the age of 50 probably don't understand the history of the internet. It was built as a communication system for the military and intelligence services to be able to talk with one another and their colleagues around the world. Scientists used it. A guy named Tim Berners-Lee, Dr. Tim Berners-Lee, created a markup language, HTML, which made it very, very easy to take the contents of one person's computer and let another one through an Ethernet connection and a worldwide connection, be able then to read another person's computer contents. This happens now through apps, and it is second nature, and people just feel it's always existed. That's not the case. Andreessen was a visionary who saw the ability to take HTML and turn it into something commercial. So the Netscape browser was born. And you'll not remember Netscape. A lot of people will think of this as Firefox, et cetera. It's been through multiple iterations. But Andreessen and his team created the first commercial web browser by many people's estimations. It became so successful so quickly that it caught Microsoft by surprise. I know this from experience having worked at the Soft. There are people at Microsoft who are unfireable. It doesn't matter what they do, they can never be fired. Because they were in the room when Microsoft made plans on how to attack the Netscape browser. Critics of Microsoft say that Bill Gates said, cut off their air supply, choke the life out of them. And critics of Microsoft made that case successfully to the Department of Justice, which at the time wasn't as politicized as it was now. Gates wasn't giving money to politicians then. They didn't play in D.C. Had they, nothing would have happened. But they didn't hand out money. Andreessen was so good at what he did that it cost Microsoft hundreds of billions of dollars to have to confront him, albeit indirectly. He sat down with Joe Rogan, and they talked about the way the government's going to treat AI companies. Please pay very, very careful attention to this.
Yeah. The AI thing was very alarming. We had meetings this spring that were the most alarming meetings I've ever been in, where they were taking us through their plans, and it was
what kind of? Can you talk about it?
Basically, just full government control, like this sort of thing. There will be a small number of large companies that will be completely regulated and controlled by the government. They told us. They just said, don't even start startups. Like, don't even bother. Like, there's just no way. There's no way that they can succeed. There's no way that we're going to permit that to happen.
Wow.
Yeah, they said this is already over. It's going to be 2 or 3 companies, and we're going to control them, and that's that. Like, this is already finished.
Oh my God! Yeah. Now, when you leave a meeting like that, what do?
You go endorse Donald Trump.
Oh, was he joking? No, he wasn't. He did endorse Donald Trump. So in the full clip, and I encourage you to watch Rogan's full cast. I mean, this is like 3 hours long. Andreessen talked about the fact that the government wasn't shy in telling him they're conceiving of the full China model. Guys, I can't say this clearly enough. All the pieces exist to be able to control us entirely. The lock pin to the grenade is the central bank digital currency. President Trump has made a promise, and that is to block the central bank digital currency from happening during his administration. Central bank digital currency would make it possible for the government to decide exactly what you can spend your money on. And this isn't even a secret. There are people who've given TED Talks and World Economic Forum presentations and even suggested plans and frameworks for nudging people to spend more money. You might have too much savings. A central bank digital currency allows the government, gives them the ability to say, you know what? You're a retired couple of 2. Your kids are doing well. They don't need you. We don't think you should be hoarding all that money. So we're going to put an extra tax on it, or we'll just take some. We'll just reduce your bank account. It'll be your way of participating in the economy. So you could go buy some stuff. We hear RVs are nice, the electric ones. Or we'll just subtract the money from your bank account. And maybe we'll give it to other people. Maybe we'll pay off college loan debt. A central bank digital currency tied into a social credit system, well, you know where that could go. And look, this is me imagining. This is me looking at all the pieces put in place. I'm not here to say this is happening now. I'm not going to say this is exactly the plan. But here's what you have to believe to think it's not part of the planning. That there are people that no one in government would desire this outcome, or that it's not being done in other countries. It is being done in other countries. It's being done in China. American companies helped the Chinese Communist Party develop their passport systems, digital passports. They made money doing that. Now, I don't get to go to meetings like this, but Marc Andreessen does. And Marc Andreessen was shocked to find out, I guess, about Operation Choke Point. Well, in his case, he's talking about Operation Choke Point 2.0. You remember Operation Choke Point? This is where the government decided that certain businesses shouldn't have the ability to bank. And if you want to look at this from a leftist perspective, right now this is true about the marijuana business. One of the reasons that marijuana shops in separate countries of Washington state, et cetera, get robbed so often is because in Washington state, all the pot companies bank basically in cash. They don't get to have bank accounts. They don't get to take credit cards. So there's all this cash sitting about. That's why they get robbed so often. And when you can't bank, it's very difficult for you to involve yourself in the world system, such as simply making an airline reservation. Marc Andreessen talked about the reality of this, the reality of how corrupted this has become. Andreessen can talk about corruption from the perspective of finance and tech. I'll talk about some corruption from the perspective of medicine. I had a conversation this weekend at the gym. Surprise, surprise, surprise. I was in a gym. I know that stuns people. And I happened to be visiting with a friend of mine who at one time owned the world record for squatting, and still an incredible weightlifter. And a guy had overheard us speaking together about weightlifting and about, I was asking Brent for some advice on deadlifts, et cetera, at my age. And a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, who is that guy? Everyone always asks him for advice. Who is he?" I said, "Oh, yeah, well, Brent's, I just gave him the background." He said, "Gosh, I didn't know that." "Yeah, no, it's who he is." And he said, "What were you guys talking about stem cells? What are they?" So I went on to describe stem cells that I got in Mexico from the people at Renew.Healthcare. And I got that because I had a shoulder blow up. I wanted to heal more quickly than when my shoulder blew up and I had to have surgery. So post-surgery, I went down to Renew.Healthcare and I regained my pull-ups and push-ups in 11 weeks versus 48 weeks. You don't need to care about gyms. You don't need to care about pull-ups. You don't need to care about push-ups. But at some time or another in your life, you're probably going to be told you have to have surgery. I did have to have it. And Renew was honest. They said, "We can't help you. There's not enough of the tissue remaining." But oftentimes people avoid surgery because they go to Renew.Healthcare. They do not need to get cut open. So I talked with this young man, and he's in his 30s. What does he care? And here's the corruption. He's going to get told sometime, no, we do this in America. No, they don't. They'll use your stem cells. If they do get stem cells from placentas and umbilical cords, which is the only stem cells that Renew uses, they then destroy the stem cells by lysing them. Not so at Renew. They are live stem cells with the absolutely brilliant ability to regrow tissue that can be cartilage, muscle, it can be tendon. It doesn't care. They're just packed with building power. Go to Renew.Healthcare. It's RENUE.Healthcare, and they will tell you if they can help you. Please make a point of letting them know that you are a family member of the Todd Herman Show on whatever platform, Renew.Healthcare. So here is Joe Rogan talking with Marc Andreessen about debanking. Now keep this in mind. Andreessen is a billionaire, has been for decades. It used to be that money meant power. And to some degree it does, but it used to mean sort of unimpeachable power. Not if you're talking about a central bank digital currency. Because in this case, According to Andreessen, the government had to go to banks and say, go do this for us.
This started about 15 years ago with this thing called Operation Choke Point, where they decided to, as marijuana started to become legal, as prostitution started to become legal, and then guns, which there's always a fight about. Under the Obama administration, they started to debank legal marijuana businesses, escort businesses, and then gun shops, just like your gun manufacturers, and just like you're done, you're out of the banking system. And so if you're running a medical marijuana dispensary in 2012, like you, guess what? You're doing your business all in cash because you literally can't get a bank account. You can't get a Visa terminal. You can't process transactions. You can't do payroll. You can't do direct deposit. You can't get insurance. Like none of that stuff is, you've been sanctioned, right? None of that stuff is available. And then this administration extended that concept to apply it to tech founders, crypto founders, and then just generally political opponents. So, yeah, so that's been like super pernicious.
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, 100%. And this is called, so it was Operation Choke Point 1.0 was 15 years ago against the pot and the guns. Choke Point 2.0 is primarily against their political enemies and then to their disfavored tech startups. And it's hit the tech world like we've had like 30 founders debanked in the last 4 years.
Really?
Yeah. It's been a big recurring pattern.
30.
This is one of the reasons why we ended up supporting Trump. It's like we can't live in this world. We can't live in a world where somebody starts a company that's a completely legal thing and then they literally like get sanctioned, right, and embargoed by the United States government through a completely unaccountable, by the way, no due process. None of this is written down. There's no rules. There's no court. There's no decision process. There's no appeal. Who do you appeal to, right? Like who do you go to get your bank account back?
Sounds a lot like losing a Facebook account, doesn't it? Or Twitter account. Sorry, there's no appeal. When we started this program, we were banned by 2 email platforms. One claimed to be a free speech platform. And we never intended to stay with the original platform long at all because it's just a joke of a platform, MailChimp. We used it because we had to start the podcast earlier than we thought. We thought we had a year to prepare for the cast. Turned out we had 3 months. My radio station decided to have me leave the radio station after I announced I was going to not renew my contract or decline the 5-year contract. They wisely made a decision to have me leave during the holidays, 3 months, and then they paid me through the rest of my contract. But it meant that I had to have the podcast up and running. So we used MailChimp. And within about a month, we got a note. You don't get to send email anymore. So we went through the whole process of warming up an email IP address, and if you're a geek, you get this stuff. It's work. It makes sure that you have a good open rate, etc. When they made that decision, they said, there's no appeal. We're not going to tell you why. We just don't like what you say. That cost us a lot of money and time. It ruined our open rate because then we had to switch to another email provider. That email provider, we talked with them. We had meeting, we had notes. We don't do that. We don't ban people. We don't ban discussion at all. We're just a platform. In about a month after we signed up, they blocked us. Now, this was during the height of the COVID stuff. Well, we were just a startup podcast. Marc Andreessen is a multi-billionaire. And to have his founders debanked is a huge deal. See, it used to be that money meant power, and it does. That's why they're seeking the central bank digital currency in my mind. Central bank digital currency can do a lot of things in addition to allowing the government to decide what you buy, when you get to buy it, how good a person you have to be, how often you have to support the party line. It can also create different economic strata. For instance, this. If you're in the business of selling meat, well, that's a bad business. It might mean that you can't take, let's say, a float. You have to pay your bills ahead of time. Whereas if you're in a favored business, such as selling soy, you can take a float. It can create economic stratas this way. There's areas of a city where you're going to pay more. Areas of a city where you'll pay less. See, to think that they wouldn't do this, you'd have to come up with a reason why. Why wouldn't they do this? Because it's wrong? Because it's unfair? Because people would find out? What exactly would stop government actors from doing this? It's difficult to come up with something. except for this, elections. One of the key things President Trump can do during his time in office, if he makes it in, God willing he makes it in, is not just ban central bank digital currencies, but work with state governors, the Department of Justice, Congress, and anyone else to make it very, very difficult to reinstall it. One of the things they could do is create what Barack Hussein Obama would call a positive right. This is something the government must do for you, such as this: defend our ability to actually own currency. See, a central bank digital currency means that you never own your money. Possession is 9/10 of the law. You never possess money under a central bank digital currency. Servers possess digits. You get to look at the digits. You don't get to touch the digits or hide the digits. Let me give you this example. I will not do business with companies like, I'm doing an investigation about MetaShare. I'll tell you about this later. I had a huge conflict with MetaShare. I'll tell you flat out, they're not a Christian company. They're nothing like a Christian company or organization. I know they pretend to not be a company, but they're not Christian in the least. And I'll get into this later. But I don't give them the ability to tap my bank account. I don't give any company the ability to tap my bank account. I have a life insurance policy I've had for a long, long time. I pay them. I send them a paper check every month. I will not give a company the ability to tap my bank account. Why? Because it's impossible to stop. Once you give a company the right to tap your bank account, you can go and tell your bank, hey, I don't want this anymore. It doesn't matter. They're still going to tap it. I've actually changed bank account numbers and had companies figure that out and still tap it. No. We said you have to go through this process to leave our billing system. Nope, I'm not going to. That's a company. What happens when you don't own your bank account? You don't own even the digits on the screen. You don't own cash. On whose side will the government be when there's a dispute? This does something else. Oh, we noticed that you were driving a little fast on the highway. We saw that. We've reported that to your insurance company. And for your convenience, we've taken some money out of your central bank digital currency account. You could appeal. And all you have to do is fill out this form and wait in line, and eventually you get to an administrative judge, and then you can go make your case as to why you should get your $135 back. It might take a couple of years, in which case you've lost all the interest on that, but what do we care? So debanking is just the very beginning of this, in my mind. Again, I'm not saying that this stuff is happening now. I'm not even saying this is their plan. This is me just having a thought experiment, but to anyone who would criticize it, I just ask, why wouldn't they do it? What has changed in government that would mean that they wouldn't go do something like this if they could? And the point is they can. So be alert. Be extra alert. We're talking over the holidays and Thanksgiving about Bone Frog Cellars. Well, that is a way to be less alert. Wine. I don't drink it, but I know it kind of calms you, relaxes you, etc. It's also alcohol, and it's tasty. bonefrogcellars.com/Todd. But let's talk coffee. Bone Frog coffee is my way to become alert in the morning, but it also comes with great taste. For many, many years, and I still do this. When I wake up, I instantly reach over and I have a swig of 5-minute energy. Oh, pardon me, 5-hour energy. I know that's what normal people call it. I call it 5-minute energy because I'm a caffeine addict. But when it's time for me to enjoy coffee, I get Bone Frog coffee. And this morning, I'm having the Goat Locker blend. This comes from a great, great story in the Navy. It's not a story, but it's a fact of the Navy. The Goat Locker is a place where enlisted officers can go hang out, and the bigwigs can't come and bug them. Doesn't matter how big the admiral is, they still have to knock and ask permission to enter the Goat Locker. This took my friend Tim Cruikshank, who's a retired Navy SEAL, 3 years of research to be able to sign off on this dark French roast, which doesn't have a hint of bitterness. It has become my very favorite of the Bone Frog blends or brews. Go to bonefrogcoffee.com/Todd. Check out all the brews. This is great for Christmas. If you're really wondering about which brew to get the sample pack. Yes, it's available in espresso. Yes, it's available in drip or French press, what have you, any delivery method, even K-Cup. We have K-Cups downstairs. If you ever come visit the studios, you can come and have a K-Cup of Bone Frog coffee. It's bonefrogcoffee.com/Todd. Get 10% off all the products there. bonefrogcoffee.com/Todd. Marc Andreessen talked about a splitting in Silicon Valley. Remember I said that he was a member of the elite? The elites are splitting themselves down the middle, which is actually good news for us as we fight to get the second greatest prize in the world, which is to save America. The first greatest prize, of course, being saving souls.
I'm going to get a lot of, the flack I'm going to get for this is, he's just a crazy, whatever, right winger. But like I was a Democrat. I supported Bill Clinton in 92. I supported Clinton in 96. I supported Gore, who I knew very well, in 2000. I knew John Kerry. I supported him in 04. I supported Obama. I supported Hillary in 16. Like I was like a Democrat in good standing. And then,
are you completely out in the cocktail circuit now? Like, are you allowed to hang out with people?
So there's now, this is actually true. There's now two kinds of dinner parties in Silicon Valley. They've fractured cleanly in half. There's the ones where every person there believes every single thing that was in the New York Times that day, which, by the way, is often very different than whatever was in the New York Times 6 months ago. But everybody has fully updated their views for that day, and that's what they talk about at the dinner party. And I'm no longer invited to those. Nor do I want to go to them. And then there's the other kind, which is, David Sachs and like all these guys and all these people and, just this growing universe. It's a microcosm of what's happening more broadly in the culture, which is like, hey, let's actually get together and talk about things and have fun.
Right, but it's so much more comforting when it's you guys and not the My Pillow guy. You know what I mean? It's like, no disrespect, Mike, to the My Pillow guy. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I want people that are smarter than me to be saying these things. Yeah. That's what helps.
When they're talking about people being smarter than us, I don't know what Rogan means by that. Rogan's got great intuition. He spends his life in interesting conversations. When he's not working out and training and fighting and having fun doing comedy things, he's built an incredible life. When you spend your time talking 3 hours at a clip to some of the smartest people in the world, you become smarter. So when Andreessen is talking about the splitting in Silicon Valley, he said something so key. And this is so important for people to understand. If you've never spent time around the elite, I'm not anywhere near the elite, but I used to spend time with them. They're as concerned about popularity as anybody. Even though they're rich, even though they come from rich families, they come from cliques. They're as concerned about popularity as anybody. Always amazing to me to see someone who's worth $100 billion in the bathroom making sure their hair is perfect. I've seen it. How could you possibly care? Everyone here is going to genuflect to you. I've seen it. I've seen people who can buy and sell cities be concerned about where they're sitting at dinner. Am I at the right table? I've watched them do this. I've watched them go and quietly complain. I think I'm supposed to be up at the head table. I think we paid for that. One of the reasons they believe what's in the New York Times today is because those guys believe what's in the New York Times today. And so do those other people. And when the narrative shifts tomorrow, then they go believe the new thing. It's tempting for those of us who've never tasted money like that, which we would construe as pure power, to think, why would they possibly care? They've got all enough money in the world to just say, kiss the world goodbye. One of the reasons they have that money is because it's a scorekeeping methodology. They've stored up treasures on earth, and they're well aware that moths and thieves can get at them. I mean, do you hear Andreessen saying this? The moths and thieves have come for the bank accounts of his founders. They've come for his speech. And so he's voting for Donald John Trump and endorsing him. And President Trump can do a lot to fix things. He can. He cannot fix the core issue. Why do human beings seek to lord their power over other human beings? Because of sin, because of coveting, because of seeking to be small g gods, instead of relying on God's wisdom and recognizing that fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. They build up their own wisdom chains. And wisdom is a great thing, particularly if it's godly wisdom. I happened to run into a product called Wisdom. I'm holding it right now. And I actually didn't know I was going to say wisdom. Bible-based herbal blend. So I ran into this and I asked Jen at Radio America Sales about it, because now this small little bottle I'm holding is a very, very potent blend of herbs and oils. And incidentally, it's absolutely delicious. So I sent Jen this note. Hey, don't know if this is any possibility, but this might be something good for the show. I really enjoy this. And then we got in touch with the company, and the strangest thing happened. Turns out that people who work at the company, way up in the company, watch and listen to this cast. They watch and listen to the podcast, and they sent us 3 bottles. So in addition to the bottle I had, they sent us 3. I kept one. I gave one to my daughter, and I gave one to my wife. They've both been trying them. My daughter uses Wisdom in her coffee. And she's a coffee addict like her dad, but she says it takes the edge off. And as I mentioned this stuff is absolutely delicious. Why is it called Wisdom? It happens that for centuries, the healing properties of herbs have been mentioned in the Bible. They've been revered for their ability to restore health, to enhance vitality, to promote spiritual well-being, and it happens that the founder, named Dr. Patrick Gentempo, was in the Holy Land, walking where Christ Jesus walked. And he read about the profound healing mysteries that are talked about in the Bible, healing knowledge, to restore vitality, mental clarity, better sleep, stress relief, joint health, detoxification, healthy inflammation response, pain, and more. And he crafted this from his background as a doctor. It's where science meets sacred healing. And for me, this is something that does take the edge off, because of all the caffeine I drink, I have to be extra alert, but I can be very, very jumpy. I can't afford to be less alert, but I don't need to be jumpy. When I take this, I'm always surprised by how good it tastes. So right now, treat yourself. Experience the power of wisdom. Right now, when you visit trywisdom.com/Todd, you can stock up on Wisdom for an incredible 33% off today, plus free shipping. Each order comes with a 180-day money-back guarantee. That's trywisdom.com/Todd, trywisdom.com/Todd. And welcome these guys to the program by visiting and buying. We'd like to have these guys stick around. President Trump can fix something. There's a lot of things he can fix. There's a huge court case that's hitting the Supreme Court this Wednesday. It's oral arguments that could change what happens to kids who become gender confused or gender defiant or gender conned. And proponents of these acts call it gender affirming care. My question is, if your genitalia does not communicate your gender, why do you need to have it removed? This is from a bill in Tennessee, Senate Bill 1, which prohibits what I call wrong sex hormones and wrong sex surgery for minors. In this prohibition, they're making the case, is Tennessee, that they're not violating the 14th Amendment. The ACLU and others are saying it does violate the 14th Amendment. We'll talk about the 14th Amendment in a minute. Here's what President Trump has said about this in regard to the military.
If you want to have a sex change or a social justice seminar, then you can do it somewhere else, but you're not going to do it in the Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, Space Force, or the United States Marines. Sorry. You're not going to do it there. The military brass that led these absurd and insulting initiatives will likewise be removed, and they will no longer be in command. They're going to be gone so fast.
President Trump pretends to not be on the teleprompter, does a little vamping. That's actually the most charming part of when he's reading the prompter. I think he hates teleprompters. I think he does. Why am I reading this? Why don't I just speak? Let's do the verbatim on the 14th Amendment. ACLU and others who want to be able to give kids wrong sex hormones, meaning 2,000 times the amount of testosterone in a girl's body that would ever occur naturally, and wrong sex surgeries, meaning the slicing apart of genitalia and the building of fake genitalia. That's what it means. They claim that not allowing that violates the 14th Amendment, or specifically the Equal Protection Clause therein. Here's the entire clause. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Let's take this in reverse. If the state of Tennessee has applied this to all kids and all families, then there's no equal protection claim, right? Are they depriving people of life, liberty, or property without due process of law? Perhaps he could make the claim that parents should be able to go to court and state the reason why they want their son's penis sliced in half, the testicles removed, his skin that surrounded his testicles turned outward and made into a fake labia, and then an 18-inch gash cut up between his legs that will, by design, never heal. It won't self-cleanse. It will not self-care. It's just a wound. They should have to go make that case in court. Maybe could make that argument. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges of immunities of citizens of the United States. There are medical practices now that are banned for kids. You don't see a lot of kids getting stomach staples. And let me make it this way, or explain it this way. There are a large number of girls who are utterly convinced that they are enormous. They're fat whales. It happens that they might weigh 101 pounds or 105 pounds. They might be near death. They might have a body fat percentage in the danger zone of 3 to 4%, meaning it's affecting their brains and their organs. Their organs can crash against each other, meaning the visceral fat inside their bodies that cushioned the organs from blows is gone or almost gone. But they look in the mirror and they say, I'm still fat. I want my stomach stapled. I want diet pills. I want that garbage that they want to give kids, Ozempic. Or how about just letting me microdose meth or nicotine? What doctor would do that? The evidence is right there. The child has a dangerously low body fat percentage that can lead to strokes and heart attacks in a 12-year-old. No, we're not going to staple your stomach or cut out part of your intestine or microdose you on a diet pill. Someone tell me the difference when a girl stands in front of a mirror and says, I'm a boy. There is no difference. And yet doctors will do this to children. The Supreme Court case, the arguments come up Wednesday. Here's what happened when I searched this on the Google machine. I searched the court case, U.S. versus Scrimeti. And to their credit, the first link went to the SCOTUS blog describing the case, but the second one went to Health Affairs. Health care for transgender people is at stake in the United States. No, it's not. These procedures for kids are at stake in Tennessee, and they may well be at stake in the United States. And I will debate any gender therapist or doctor at any time based upon my suggestion. Here's my position. Anorexic girls should be given the same exact privilege to do with their bodies, which you're giving gender dysphoric girls to do with theirs. Gender dysphoric girls are girls. They have female chromosomes. They have female body parts. They have female hip to waist ratio. They have female muscle tissue. Everything is female. All the data says female. All the observable, readable, reproducible, trackable data says female. An anorexic girl weighing 101 pounds, 4% body fat, who says she's fat, all the data says, no, you're not. All the observable, repeatable data says she's not. The anorexic girl thinks she's fat. The gender dysphoric girl thinks she's a boy. One is subject to hormones and surgery. One is told it's all in their head. When someone can come on and explain the difference to me, well, everything will change, but you can't. Can't be done. I believe a lot of people are spiritually captured into believing they're doing the right thing. I got to believe this reverend thinks he's doing the right thing. This is so wild. This is a reverend at a church singing something that we had to bleep out. All my N-words need Jesus. Need Jesus. Every bleep is an N-word. I don't pretend to understand the culture there. I don't pretend to understand why it's okay for black people to use the N-word. I know it is because black culture has decided it is. I'm not part of black culture. I don't get to do a real critique there. I would just offer you this. What would Jesus say? I think he'd say, please don't call yourself that. Please don't do that. After all, in the body of Christ, there's neither Greek nor Jew, servant nor slave, male nor female in the body of Christ. And no, that does not mean that Jesus was a so-called trans woman. It means that he sees us as one body. This is the Todd Herman Show. Please go be well, be strong, be kind, and please make every effort to walk in the light of Christ.